Well, it's about that time. How often have we said that? The time has come. What is time? How do we manifest it? Because it's a construct. So we are sort of kind of manifesting it. And in that time, sometimes we get frazzled and we forget how to manage it at all. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And before we do that, I think it's time that everybody introduce themselves. So we'll start with Willie.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm Willie Nicol, the cop turned coach, personal development mindset change. And I help stressed out men who are feeling lost or stuck or overwhelmed to get their life and their mojo back using my 90-day program with no psychobabble or coaching mumbo jumbo. Thank you.
We like that. We might have to talk about that one time. Mary.
I too am a coach and I work with people who are stretched, busy, and frazzled with time, inevitably. So I love this topic, one of my favourites. So I actually support people to get their time back and enjoy life and have fun.
Okay. Angela.
So I'll join the bandwagon and say I'm a coach as well. But actually, what I prefer to do and what I'll do with my clients more is some more therapy aspects and the energetic side of things. So I use kinesiology and hypnotherapy to work with my clients. And it could be whatever they're dealing with, whether their stuff is too heavy and they need to put it down, or they're too scared to put it down. And at the moment, I'm focusing a lot on money mindset. So I love working with the energy that is money. So talking about the energy that is time, it's also quite fun too.
Oh, this is getting good. I like this. So I'm Leslie Marsh, and I kind of do that too, coaching within therapy, because I think that when you're a therapist, you tend to be a little bit of a coach as well, because you're actually trying to get people to move forward and to get away from the time when they're in a bad space, or not a good space, shall we say. I'm a culture of nurture consultant person. This is my new title. Because I'm
Well, the
thinking that,
consultative nurture person thing.
yes, this is my new title because I'm always having trouble trying to introduce myself on here. So I've decided that to just embrace the confusion and go with it. It's about time. So let's talk about that. Let's go. What is time?
Um,
Not what is the time. It's going to be one of those days. This is what happens when we do these in the afternoon. Willie, what do you think about
Well,
time?
I like the word frazzled, right? Because we can be frazzled, and a lot of it's to do with time. I often find that if I'm going to do some sort of project or something that's going to take a bit of time, it always takes twice as long as I anticipate. So if I'm going to be doing something, I think that'll take an hour. Nah, it's usually 2 hours. And that's with long, bitter experience. Um, we can then go into time management. How well do we, or how badly do we manage our time? And that's another whole different conversation. But we could talk about the Eisenhower matrix,
Mhm.
which is what's urgent, not urgent, immediate, important, all that kind of stuff. But I think most people just think time is a kind of infinite concept. That there'll always be time for that. But regrettably, that's not always the case. So the old adage, use your time wisely, is very, very important. And don't get frazzled. If you run out of time, you run out of time. Tomorrow's another day. If you get to the end of your deadline and you still haven't accomplished what you set out to achieve, you think, I've run out of time. Unless, of course, you're sitting an exam or something like that. So don't get frazzled by time. There's no point to it. All that happens is you get upset and annoyed and angry and stressed. But there'll be time if you use it wisely.
Really?
I was sitting there listening to you Willie, and I just sort of was reminded of a wonderful woman I know, and many years ago when I first met her, she always thought that time time is fluid. It's not fixed. And she always came across to me as being very calm. And it struck me was if something is really important to her, she just stays in the moment. And somehow all the other stuff just happens around her. And I thought it was a wonderful way to live your life. She's never frazzled by time. Her time just expands. She says, no, it's not fixed. And I didn't understand it at the time when she said it originally, but I do now, I think, a little bit. And I do notice that myself included, if I have something that is important to me, I will always find the time. And somehow it will get done. Or I may choose to do it in bits. But that notion of, I've got 10 minutes, I have to get it done. Now, do I get people to say, spend 10 minutes on a task and get it done? Yes, I do. But they tend to be people who are in that overwhelmed, frazzle state, and you're trying to put a little order in it to show them how you move through time. You can change it, you can do things, you can practice things. So I do think there's a lovely sense in which we use the word time. We don't use it in a consistent way. Even though we have time as hours, minutes, days, we use time around tasks and things we love. Very different sense from you've got 10 minutes to get the task done. Or the exam, Willie. In which case it probably is 10 minutes.
Angela.
It's really interesting because you were talking about your time expands or your task expands to fill your time. It's one of those kind of concepts. And I think a lot of people run around like headless chickens because they're too busy. And busy seems to be one of these buzzwords that it's almost a badge of honor that a lot of people have. So there's a busyness fallacy. And I don't know if it's necessary that being busy is a good thing or a bad thing. It just is a thing, and we don't need to have that as a badge. So what do we choose to spend our time on? So like money, just like the time, we can spend it. Unlike money, we can't save it. So we have a set number of minutes every day, and everybody on the planet has that same set number of minutes in that day. And it's all about what you choose to do with them. And that's the other thing I talk to my clients a lot about, the choice. We choose what we do. So yes, if you've got to go to work, you've got to get up and you've got to get yourself to work, and you've got to be there potentially for a certain time. But you choose what time you get out of bed in the morning. You could choose to get up out your bed earlier. You could choose to get up later. And then at the end of your working day, you've got the choice of what you do with that evening. And I think a lot of people tend to forget that there is a choice. And actually, even down to the job, there's a choice because you could choose not to do it. You might then not pay the bills, but that's again a different story. We'll talk about money some other time.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really interesting. And all the way through there, I was thinking about Einstein and relativity and how Einstein would say time goes really, really fast when you're enjoying yourself. If you've got your backside on a hot plate, it's going to take a really, really long time for you to get off of there when it hurts. So it's, when we're bored, time drags. So therefore, it's how we perceive the passing of time to a certain extent. When Roger Bannister was doing the 4 Minute Mile, it was deemed impossible to break the 4 minutes until he broke it into seconds. He wasn't going for another minute. He was just going for another second. 1 more second, 2 more seconds, 3 more seconds. And by taking it down to its little elements and just breaking it down into that 1 second unit, his brain managed to fool his body into saying, you can go faster. You can do this. You can go faster. And he did. And this is something that I think is the way we perceive what time we've got. And the busyness of being busy is usually keeping someone from thinking about something they really don't want to be doing or they really don't want to be thinking about. I know that there's people in my life who have a to-do list that is a never done list because they never get to the end of it because they're always putting something else on. Oh, I must put that on the list. I'll write that down and I'll put that on the list. I'll write that down, I'll put that on the list. But they don't prioritize. One thing is as important as the other. So phoning someone to say, I need to get that job done, do that, I'm not going to be able to do that, is just as important as going to the doctor's, keeping an appointment. And sometimes that might be the case because it might be the fact that your job depends on it. But at the same time, you know, if you have to go to the chip shop for a bag of chips for somebody because they can't be bothered to go for themselves, then I think that you could reasonably say, that's not worth my time. Because it is an expensive energy. And of course, I mentioned it before, I did look. So, talking about being frazzled and how we are in the moment, we are actually, when we're frazzled, we are purely in the moment because we can't get out of it. We can't see a way out of it. Being frazzled is a stuck. It's like a record stuck in a groove. Same thought again and again and again. Can't do it, won't do it, not working. So the physics explanation is the measure of a change in a physical quality or magnitude used to quantify the duration of events. Simpler one is the measured and measurable period during which an action, process, or condition exists or continues. So no matter how frazzled we get, we're still taking up time. We don't see it as that because we've lost the plot.
Those explanations are, if I may say so, quite verbose. To go back to your to-do list, I mean, I have a post-it note right here. It's not a to-do list, it's a reminder list, right, to remind me that there are things I need to do and get them done. Another way of looking at your to-do list is call it a will-do list. No, I've got to do that. Change it to will do. And then you can look at it and prioritize, as you said, Leslie. I will do that. Well, do I need to? No. So that gets scored off. That to do actually doesn't need done. The will do kind of focuses your mind on, yeah, I've got to do that will do thing. I'm also reminded, has anyone ever woken up an hour before their alarm clock's due to go off?
Yeah.
And you wake up, you look at the clock, go, it's 7 a.m. Oh, great, I've got another hour, I've set it for 8. And you fall asleep. And a nanosecond later, the alarm goes off. It's almost as if you haven't closed your eyes, an hour hasn't passed, you have fallen asleep, bang. That hour is just accelerated into a nanosecond. And if you look at time that way, it can be, as you say, Leslie, when you're bored, time drags on. Time flies when you're having fun. Why is that? It's the way our mind looks at the state or the activity. If we're bored, yeah, this is going to take forever. If we're having fun, whoosh, it's gone. It's all to do with the way our mind processes the concept of time. And we could go on and on and on and on. If you're like Star Trek, the space-time continuum, Captain, right? What the hell does that mean? But
it means we have to develop warp speeds.
I kind of get it, right? Space-time continuum. Yes, it's kind of continuous, but it can kind of speed up and slow down. So anyway, to get back to more practical things, like your to-do list, your will-do list, or the Eisenhower matrix, you can spend a lot of time thinking about how you spend your time, right? And that again is probably not very productive. So it's how to use our time wisely is the $64,000 question.
Yeah, there are people who actually spend all their working life dealing with how people deal with their time. Time management people have that kind of, what are you doing? How many seconds have you taken to do this?
There's an interesting piece of that. There's an interesting piece of that because I remember once I was asked to give some talks on time management, And I'm one of those, and I was just doing an introduction and into the talk, and it was all lovely. But people are not good at judging how long you've been at something. So if you say, did that take a minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes? Actually, I generally don't really know. And I think it comes to that thing, Willie, you mentioned earlier about, whatever task I'm going to do is going to take me twice as long. Our ability to say, this is how long something takes. We're not skilled at it. Now, because we work in therapy sessions for the most part, we learn a capacity to understand the flow of maybe either a half an hour or an hour or whatever length of time we've planned for the session. But we have to work at it. And most of us keep clocks reasonably to hand too, if we're conscious of our billing. So you'll actually, you won't rely on your own ability to understand the time lapse. So I think that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to actually say if that's a 5 minute task or a half an hour task. We're not good at judging what that inside in that abstract in our heads, how long that actually is. But it can be learned, but we're not good at it naturally. I don't think we are.
And then if you talk about the whole space-time continuum and running the Star Trek thing along, you've then always got that the engineer would tell the captain how long something was going to take. Oh, I can't do it any faster. But actually, he was talking nonsense. He was doing it that way so that he could then show off how wonderful he was because he'd come in under time, under budget type concept. So there's a lot of playing we can do with time as well. And just because someone says something's going to take an hour, it might not. But as Willie said, it might take double. And it is that perception, it is that understanding. And then it comes to timekeeping. So I don't like being early places. I'll slide in by the skin of my teeth, bang on time. I'm not a fan of being early because I don't know what it is. I've just never done that. But then I've got other people who get really, really upset because they got to be there 10 minutes before an event. If I'm not 5 minutes early, I'm late. So again, it's about perception, it's about what you do with it, and about your rules of engagement with life as to what all that means. And I think for me, one of the big things to remember is that just because that's how I like things done, or that's how I behave and how I act, doesn't mean everybody else has that same mindset, philosophy, whatever you want to call it. And a big part of upset comes because there's a lack of communication. So even when it comes to something as simple as time, there needs to be communication there as well.
Yeah, you get to know people's foibles in that department. My sister used to be known as the late missus because she was always at least an hour late for anything. So we used to actually tell her it was an hour earlier so she would be on time. And it never really clicked with her that she was, being managed that way. But the
Whenever
other
my
thing,
friends did that, those were the days I was on time.
yeah,
And then I was really annoyed because I was there 10, 15 minutes before everybody else and there was no sign of them, which then made my habits even more ingrained because I didn't like arriving early. I would go and sit in the
yeah.
car outside and wait until I was late to go
Because it was
in.
boring. It was boring to be sitting there early. Yeah, you should be going out with us when Andrew decides that he's going to be early. It's usually 2 hours.
But I'm blessed or cursed
That's
with
cut down.
a need for punctuality. I like to be punctual. Not 10 minutes early necessarily, but I don't like being late, right? I think it shows a lack of respect for the other people who you're meeting. But then you get other people who rock up 10, 15 minutes later and you're sitting there seething, right? Because the meeting's been delayed and they come in and go, "Hi, everybody. What's wrong with you, Willie? What's your problem?" When I say you're late, right? That kind of thing. And it's a kind of mindset thing. I believe there are, I seem to be able to do this in an NLP exercise, is there are people who are forward facing, who always like to be there on time. There are people who are kind of sideways facing who don't care if they're there on time and are actually baffled by why the punctual people would get bent out of shape by people who weren't punctual. And it's just one of these things. But I do think that being on time is a good thing because it shows some respect for the other people that you're meeting. And it shows that you have, I don't know, maybe it's just me, my ex-police background, is that you had to be on time. Yeah. So it shows a kind of self-discipline and a self-awareness. And people who don't appear on time, you might wrongly assume they were just lazy so-and-sos. I nearly used a bad word there, but
Mhm.
that's my perception of punctuality.
And I think, do you know, it's fascinating. And I've had conversations about this lots because I know this about myself. And I think a big part of that is a rebellion. So rather than it's not that I don't respect the person I'm meeting, and when I am working with clients, I am on time. But it is that concept that when I've got to go somewhere to be somewhere, I might not be on time, but it is I think a big part of it is it's a rebellion. So just like my rebellion as a teenager was to not drink because everybody else around me was drinking, my other rebellion was to be late because everybody else was in particular jobs. It was very much a case of you will be at your desk 5 minutes before and your computer will be switched on and you will be ready to start on the dot. But when it comes to the end of the day, you will not switch your computer off until the dot goes. And my philosophy was, so you're actually not paying me for the hours that I'm here. You're paying me for an extra 10 minutes an hour end, but you're not. So you're getting 20 minutes of my time potentially, and I'm not being paid for it. So yeah, again, it was a rebellion and it was very petty and very childish. It still stuck with me, and I'm okay with that.
I learned when I was in Glastonbury about the Glastonbury time. I learned that time was different everywhere, depending on where you were. Because in Glastonbury, there's an ish that goes with every time. I'll say you 10-ish, because and they do it so much that the ish has been forgotten. So anybody who's coming in there, they say, yeah, see you at 10. So you rock up there maybe 10 to or 10, 5 minutes to, whatever. And then you're sitting there until about 20 past and they haven't turned up. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Hi, how you doing? Great. Yeah. I'll have, yeah. Where have you been? I've been sitting here for 20 minutes. What's going on? Oh, wow. Okay. And I'm like, what is it that's in the air here that nobody seems to bother about where they are, when they are, or how they are?
Then you've
Well,
you've you've got here,
we
you've
live
got
in
the
Ireland.
I'll meet you at the back of 10. What does that mean? Is it
Anywhere
just
between a
before
minute
10?
past and half past.
Or is it anywhere between 10 and 11? Is it before 10?
No,
Auspiciously enough,
they,
Leslie, this time-ish next week, next Friday, I will be in Glastonbury. And I can concur with your assessment that you can enter into a parallel universe where,
Mhm.
okay, you're on holiday, right? So that's a part of it. But time sometimes can stand still in Glastonbury, depending on whereabouts in the street you're standing and who you're talking
Oh,
to,
yeah.
and what you're
Hmm.
doing at the time. So anyway, I'm immensely looking forward to it. Sorry
Yeah, the
to,
thing is, you're going to be on holiday. They're not.
but even the people not on holiday seem to kind of,
Yeah, you
yeah.
just go with the flow. You just go, oh, yeah, well, we'll just go there. We'll
So,
just go
so
there.
that's an interest when we talk about going with the flow quite a lot in many of our businesses. Why do we not go with the flow when it comes to time?
See, this is it. I think it's great because when we're talking about a continuum, I I read this the other day. What was I reading? I wasn't audible reading, listening to. Don't push the river; it flows by itself. Time's already going because we've constructed it and we've left the little robot to go and self-prioritize itself. And we're the ones who get upset when we don't, get jump on the bus at the right time. So I think that basically it's a case of we want to control it.
I think the river analogy is very apt because, sorry to interrupt, if you can imagine time as a river, right, when the river narrows, the speed of the flow increases, it gets faster. Then when it broadens out, it slows down. So the
Mm.
flow is slower. So there'll be times in our life where our river will go through a narrow bit, things will speed up. Obviously, this is in your head. And then times when you get to a nice wide part where things slow down and you're avoiding the tree trunks and all that stuff that's flowing along in the branches with you. But I do like that because that's been my experience. Sometimes time flows quickly or passes quickly or whatever you want to call it. Other times, and we talked about boredom, it's slow. And sometimes it's a pleasant slow, like when you're in Glastonbury. And other times it's a very kind of boring slow. So it's how we deal with that. I think, well, if we're bored, it's time to speed up the time, go and do something. And then if it's too fast, let's try and slow the flow and make it not quite as frantic or frazzled.
Mm.
It's interesting, that boredom concept. Sorry, Liz. It was just when we were bored as kids, we were told to just get on with it. When my nieces and nephews are bored as kids, they're given a device.
Mm.
And I was reading a study that said actually, when you're bored, that's when your imagination kicks in. That's when your creativity kicks in. That's when your problem solving kicks in, and you start to look at things differently. So if you're never bored, do you never then have that moment to bring in your creativity, to think of things in a different way, or to ponder? And perhaps being bored and on that to me, the wider part, or that nice lazy river, that's okay.
Yeah,
Embrace
it's one of
it,
the things that,
enjoy it.
yeah, this is it. In Glastonbury, I embraced it and I realised I came to the conclusion that everything was still getting done. It just was getting
Without the
done in a way that
stress.
was non-stressful. Nobody was tearing their hair out because they were 5 minutes late. Nobody was bothered that, you were 5 minutes late or that you were 10 minutes early. It was kind of nice that you were there because you'd had a nice conversation with somebody who was waiting for somebody else, and it's just a whole different way of looking at it. And I think that that's part of what it is. And the boredom thing, yeah, definitely. But a lot of that is giving the devices so that the other person doesn't have to entertain the child. They don't have,
When we were
why do
kids,
why
we
do
were
we feel,
not
but we shouldn't,
entertained.
we don't
No.
need to. We don't need to because as children we entertained
Next
ourselves.
time, don't come back.
Exactly. Go outside and talk to a tree or a bus or
I
anything.
go
You
play with
know,
the buses. I'm sure I
go
got
play
told
with the
that a few
buses. Yeah,
times.
I think I used to get told that a lot, and I did. It hurt. But anyway, there's
Only you would take it literally, Leslie.
well, yeah, I do have that kind of aspect, don't I? Yeah. Anyway, but there are times when we forget that now we people can look at boredom as the time when they could be meditating. A lot of people think meditation is boring and, because they don't feel that they're doing anything. And I think that these days we are expected to be doing something every second of every day. And even when we're asleep, we've got to be doing something. Now we're learning in our sleep, we're doing this, we're listening to books in our sleep, we're doing okay, I'm not knocking it. It can be great, but sleep is also for healing and rest. It's for the brain to kind of settle down and say, oh, now it's my turn to work and do all the stuff in the background. All the show is in the front. It's all the technical stuff in the back that needs time to get set up and done for the next day, which is sometimes why we wake up an hour early because they're all finished. They're sitting having a cup of tea going, right, you're ready to start, go.
I think that comes back to that busyness fallacy as well. We don't have to be doing something, but actually, we're always doing something. If we weren't doing something, we would be dead.
I think there's
Because
a
our body's still
There's
processing, we're still breathing, we're still doing lots
there's
of
differences in
things.
the doing, and that's what we're not realizing. The doing is there's differences in the doing. We can delegate. We could have a delegation list.
And so if you come back to the doing as well, remember, we're not human doings,
We're
we're
human
human
beings.
beings.
Mm.
I think there's an external pressure that you should be doing something constructive with your
Mm.
time all the time.
Subjective.
Within what is constructive.
Yeah.
So if I
And
want to go and,
who determines it?
exactly, if I want to go and sit in the deck in the back garden and look at the flowers and listen to the birds, right? Is that constructive? Possibly not. But
Oh,
I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
But
Oh, it's
says who?
absolutely
it's
constructive
absolutely constructive.
So
because
We're giving you permission, Willie, on you go.
oh yeah,
no,
let me
no,
go.
well,
Definitely.
I actually do that. You sit outside. We have a big beech hedge beside, running between our garden and the neighbour's garden. He even has a palm tree in his garden because he's living in the West Coast. And there are birds flying in and out like the little spaceships in Star Wars. Right? Fascinating to watch. And you can spend some time just watching the birds or listen to the birds or whatever. Right? And maybe it's a form of meditation, Leslie, or it's a form of
Mm.
mindfulness where you just switch off and think, this is nice. Is that a constructive use of my time? Depends how you look at it. I happen to think so because I might have been frazzled and I did that. I
No, you're
utilised that
not.
time to become
Mm.
unfrazzled and then get back on with whatever it was.
I bribe the wee darlings. I feed them so that they come into the garden.
So does
And
my wife.
the best fun is watching the big ravens and crows and the magpies, because they beat each other up like you don't believe. And they'll find new and different ways to get into things that they're not supposed to be in. It's better than watching the telly, actually, because you're engaging with something that's natural and you're looking at something that is giving you pleasure. And sometimes it's making you laugh uncontrollably because you can't believe it. But this is also a change of state. It's changing your state, being able to go out and watch nature at work and to actually see it and appreciate it gives you time to be human, be a human being human.
I'm laughing here because there's a pigeon rocks up at a particular time, right, waiting for my wife to throw out the fat balls or the seeds or whatever, right? Now, I don't know if it's the same pigeon, right? My wife swears blind it is the same pigeon, right? And
She named him.
And this cheeky bugger will come up on the steps in the deck and kind of sit there and going, well, right? I thought, really? But it's just, that's just watching the pigeon waiting for its food.
Oh
And you
yeah, they
think,
get used to it. Yeah, they get used to it, and they leave messages on my car if I've upset them in any way because I haven't
well,
given them the right stuff.
But I do think there's something really interesting here, because when we talk about people being frazzled, that's switching of our attention to nature or to our breathing or to our meditation. That pulling away, that is critical for anybody who is struggling to manage time, because they need to switch. They need to make a shift. And nature is wonderful. I'm blessed with loads of animals that appear, that particularly cats, foxes,
That's because you
pigeons.
feed them.
Well, Well, no. I recycle the food. I allow it to form part of nature, so it's recycled. I don't buy them food. I give them scraps, but we use them. So I'm managing the resources properly. There's no food waste in my house, ever. Yes, but the interesting is that switch, and I mean, I think you referred to it earlier, Angela. We have to learn to make choices. So when we feel the frazzled on time, we've got to learn to switch, to calm, to breathe. And yeah, Willie, I'm with you. Sit on a deck and just listen to the birds. Absolutely fabulous.
but it's like
That's the point, though. That's the point, though. We have to understand that we have a choice, that there is a choice available to not be frazzled. And sometimes it's a case of when we're being frazzled, it can be something that serves something in us that might be an old contract that was made a long time ago because of some fractal of information that's come in and it's ricocheting around and ricocheting around, just waiting for that moment, that space where you lose it. And then it goes in there like a little elf arrow and goes, yeah, you're stuck now, I've got you. You have no choice, you have to be this way. When actually your whole body is telling you, don't be this way, because you're getting tight chested, you're getting sweaty, you're getting your blood pressure coming up, you're really getting angry, your adrenaline's going, and you're knocking yourself out. Because, I mean, who does not feel tired after they've had a frazzle? I mean, everything is just getting fangled everywhere. That's a good Scots word for you. And basically, it's a case of afterwards, where did that time go? Was it worth it? And Angela will know that I'm talking from experience because she's seen it happen. And she's been the one who's going, oi, snap out of this. Because
It's usually too far away for me to slap her. It's really quite disappointing sometimes.
Yeah, it's really frustrating for her. I know, it's really frustrating. But at the same time, it's really good in a way because I'm learning that there is a choice. And I'm learning now my beautiful universal mind that I'm astounded by sometimes, is showing me things. And you'll know this from NLP, once we set the radar, we will start to get, look at that, notice this, instead of being that time there, be there. And I've learned so much recently about different forms of shamanic work, Toltec. And they talk about domestication of humans. And that's our behavioural conditioning that we get in our
The
cultures,
very
in
fact
our
we've
ways of
got one
being,
of them is a
and the
domestication of
fact that
humans,
we've got
right?
one of them is behavioural conditioning. And it's brilliant. And it's just, I'm just looking at it, I'm going, yeah, okay, so why do I have to bother with that? And it's actually showed up a couple of times that recently, particularly, where I haven't lost it. I've just sat there and going, okay, then, if this is how it's going to work, this has got to be the moment for this to work because it's here. And all I've got to do is deal with it. And I don't even have to deal with it. I can just let it be what it is.
I think
And it's been
sorry,
great.
we don't have to accept that being frazzled is part of the human condition.
No.
You can learn time to switch off,
Mm.
right?
And that doesn't mean go and play a computer game or bingo.
No, give yourself
But
permission.
it can if you want it to be.
But
Give yourself
yes, it
permission to
can.
stop.
But not as a substitute for something else.
Well,
Not just to keep yourself busy.
yes, there's the phrase "the busy fool," right?
Mm.
So doing something just to distract yourself or divert your attention, right, can be a good thing, like sit and listen to the birds, or doing something just for the sake of it. So there's another hour of my life I won't get back because I've done a computer game or I've watched this stupid video or I've done nothing constructive or whatever. But we can give ourselves permission. Say, I permit myself or give myself permission not to be frazzled. Give myself
Mm.
permission to turn the big off switch, whatever. So it's a question of allowing yourself to get into that mindset of it doesn't need to be this way. Being frazzled isn't a prerequisite of being alive. Yes, accept is a wonderful thing. There will be times we get frazzled because that's just the way it is, right? Try renegotiating your car insurance with some muppet at the end of a phone, right? That can be quite frazzling. However, I had a lovely lady the other day there who did it for me, but that's fine. There will be times you get frazzled. It's what you do with the frazzled, right? How long you permit it to contain you in its grip, as it were. Or do you turn around and say, oh, time to stop, time to quit the frazzledness and switch off and get on with something else, even if it is only meditation, mindfulness, or listen to the pigeons or watching the pigeons or whatever, right?
Don't
Because
be
you'll be in a much
dazzled by
better
the
space.
frazzle.
You'll be in a much better space after you've done it. Go, you know what? That frazzle thing just went away, and I'm now in a better place to get on with what I wanted to get on with.
I'm going to chuck a
Thing
quick spanner in the works on that one, just on the fact that watching some silly video, there's so much power in laughter. So if
Yeah.
that silly video makes you laugh, brilliant. And then silly computer games and video games on your phone, pattern matching games have been scientifically proven to actually help calm the noise and get you quiet. So if you've got anxiety responses, if you've got panic attack responses, if you've got unwelcome flashbacks coming to mind, 10 minutes in a pattern matching game will switch all that off and calm it down. So while we say don't spend hours and hours and hours doing that as a complete avoidance tactic, there's also benefits. So it's about choosing what you're doing it for
But
and
you can listen to
choosing.
music, whatever. One of my clients came to me and I said, what can I do for you? He said, I want you to help stop the noise in my head. And I thought, oh, because he was frazzled. He had a lot going on in here, right? And we had to sort of, I always compare it with this. Imagine you've got a little hamster on a wheel inside your head. And these are the thoughts going round and round. And this poor hamster is running faster and faster. So learn to give the poor wee guy a break and say, stop, get off your wheel, let's have some calm. We don't need to be frazzled. The hamster will thank you for that, right? Metaphorically speaking. So being frazzled doesn't necessarily have to be the case. We can stop it if we learn to do so.
I'm just thinking of watching all the hamsters that I've ever known in my life go round and round and round and round in wheels and then throw themselves out because of the centrifugal effect that happens when they go too fast. Which I suppose is kind of what happens when we stop thinking properly. But
I think
the other
it's
thing
really.
is that, sorry.
I was going to say it's really interesting that and fantastic that your client came to you saying, I'm frazzled and I want to quieten that mind. I've worked with clients who have been so frazzled, and very much the time poor, and they tell themselves that they're time poor constantly. And the challenge with that one is actually breaking through that barrier to saying, well, you could be time rich. It doesn't have to take that much of an effort, but they just can't see it. So, and I have prescribed meditation. I prescribe 1 minute of meditation. Oh, that's too much. But my 1 minute of meditation was as you've gone to bed and switched the lights out and you're lying in bed trying to go to sleep. That's the minute I'm talking about. You're not doing anything else with it. Now, granted, I've never managed to make it through that minute. I've always fallen asleep within it. But actually, that's not a bad thing either. But that was too much. So for me, it's trying to break through the barrier for people in those situations to help them to understand that they're not a slave to the time. They're not a slave to their clock. And there are things we can do to get them to being time rich and appreciating life and realizing they've got choices.
But I do think we also at the same time have to teach them to say no to people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it's saying no to themselves.
This is it. This is it. There's this frazzling and thing of controlling time is a symptom, not a cause. And the cause is the disruption of the idea of the flight, fright, freeze concept in us, because that is an ancient thing from times when we were actually going to be in danger, and we faced danger nearly every minute of every day, just going out of the cave or whatever little hole we were living in, trying to get away from all the beasties and all the things that, if we could cut ourselves, then we'd die of septicemia because we didn't have penicillin at those days. The thing is, that still works, but it works in a way now that when our thoughts and emotions start becoming riderless horses that just running all over the place by themselves, we don't seem to be able to understand that it's not a real thing. It's not something that's going to kill us.
We talk about to-do list and a will-do list. Some people have a must-do list. I must do that. And they get really frazzled if they don't succeed and get through their must-do list.
I've gone for a to-done list. It's much easier. I put it on the list once I've finished it.
Say, see that must-do thing? Really? Must do, must do, must do. You're imposing an internal command on yourself. Right? I must get that done. I must get that done. If you don't get it done, yeah, you're going to get frazzled. But you should have stopped at the beginning and said, this must-do thing, really? Is it a must-do? Or is it a nice to do? Or can do? Or might do? Is it must? And if you make the decision, it's not a must. Life will become a lot calmer.
I have a must do. I must go out to the garden today and do the tomatoes because they need to be fed and they need to have their little leaves cut off so that all the juices can go into the fruit. Now when I do that, I am going out there and I am having a meditative moment. I am going out into that garden and I'm connecting with those plants, and nothing else will matter in my life.
Perhaps we need to co-opt that must-do list to being self-care and self-consideration and what is going to benefit me the most. And that's what must be done. Because if I'm not benefiting me, then I can't benefit anybody else.
I think that's true. Yeah. Yeah. And saying no, Mary, definitely. The thing that we have to say no to is this. Hang on a minute. What am I getting upset about? Who's going to die if I don't get there in 5 minutes, and it could be that we can also put ourselves into danger trying to rush to get somewhere on time. We can make that mistake. We can lose attention. We can end up in an accident or get ourselves flustered so much that we get on that, like Andrew did the other day, get on the wrong side of the road to catch a bus and watch it go by you on the other side. So there are things that happen, and it's understanding that we don't have to be in control of everything every minute of every day. Some things just have to be what they are. And if we can let them be what they are and realize that the world didn't end, then it's a winner. It just depends on what it is that we feel is so important that it's like oxygen to us. What is it that we feel not know, but we feel we have to be in charge of, that we take so much of the time that we have and waste it on being worried about whether we're going to be on time, whether we're going to be late, whether we're going to be too early, whether we're going to be, this person's going to do this and do that, but they haven't done it yet. Anxiety and stress are actually things that haven't happened yet. We make them happen and then deal with the fallout. If there's something that's going to happen, it'll happen. How we look at it, like Willie was saying earlier, how we look at it, how we perceive it, is how it will affect us. And the effect of that is we will teach ourselves how to be frazzled and then forget to unteach ourselves later.
Well, any learned behaviour can be unlearned. So if we learned to let ourselves be frazzled, we can unlearn it.
Yeah. And the time has come to stop being frazzled, because we've got to stop and go and be non-frazzled too. So thank you for listening and watching, and we'll see you again